2014. Roll call.
Director Solano?
Here.
Director Einstein?
Here.
Director Crawley? Here. Director Carpenter?
Here.
I'd like to note for the record that Director Bernstein is not present and we have a quorum.
All right, thank you. That brings us to public comment number 1, where you can talk on any subject that's not listed on the agenda.
I have a question or a comment. At what point does the board render a decision as to the disposition of the standing committees and/or the liaisons officially? Are you guys on summer break and they'll be reconvened in September, or are they just totally dissolved?
No, they're not totally dissolved. I'll take care of that next week.
Okay,
Thanks for asking.
okay. Thank you, Rich.
So, do you want to go, Patty? Brian?
Not yet.
You
Not
want-
yet.
Okay, we have a public comment at the end.
No, but I think, can we speak to things on the agenda
Yes.
later?
Yes. Okay.
Oh, wait, thank you.
So that brings us to item number 1, adopt a resolution for the fiscal year 2014-2015 budget and full-time equivalent staffing level.
A second.
Okay, moved and seconded, discussion?
Staff is on the phone and Fariba is here in case you have any questions.
Okay.
As I've indicated to you before the meeting, I'd like to have all the expenditures related to Station 6 tabled until after the second item on the agenda. So I move to table expenditures regarding Station 6 from the budget approval at this time.
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion? Okay. So the motion is to table all items in the budget that relate to Station 6. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Okay. So, we will not talk about anything that has to do with Station 6, will not be included in approval of the budget. Discussion on the budget, is there anything to discuss? Does anybody have anything?
I just think the staff has done a great job. I'd like to compliment the people who put the budget together. I think the chief and the financial team and the management team have just done a superb job. I realize that we're trying to move towards a new chart of accounts, but we've got what we've got. And I think anybody who wants to try to find out where the money's going, they can find out where the money's going. From a management perspective, I'm hoping that this time next year, we'll have a budget that provides us with better management tools because it's organized in a way that's more consistent with the organization.
Thank you, Director Carpenter. I appreciate that, and a lot of what to do is coming back.
Great.
And I'll second that, mainly because I know we're going through a transition, and so I appreciate the work and the patience that y'all are putting into this as we transition into a new, it's not a new system in terms of account, but it's the director. So thanks for your hard work.
Thank you.
Rex, I'd like to explain why I didn't vote to table the Station 6 tabling budget issue.
Okay.
The reason why is because, as I spoke with the chief, my first priority is to try to get that station built for the residents of Menlo Park. And I understand that there will be an initiative on the ballot coming up. And I think that the process should go forward. And if people within Menlo Park want to put some type of initiative there because of the concerns that they have, I think that we should part of the process and go forward with trying to build the station. And I think by holding up the expenditures will in turn maybe create some bad faith between us and the city of Menlo Park.
Okay. Rob, let me explain my motion. My motion is to remove it from item 1 and to then put it back on the table after we decided item 2 tonight.
Right.
So when we walk out of here tonight, you know, we will have dealt with the Station 6 line item. It will not be left on the table. That's my intention.
Okay.
I think we're on the same page.
No, thank you for the clarification.
Yeah. Yeah, and I discussed that with the president ahead of time, sorry if I didn't make it clear. It was just to defer that decision until we have the decision of where we're going to locate the station. Because that will then have a big impact on what the expenditures are. And we can discuss that when we get the,
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Any
Thank
further
you for the
discussion?
clarification.
And I'll call for the question.
Okay. All those in favor of a resolution to approve the 2014-2015 budget? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
that's our record.
And we,
Thanks to
Great staff.
Anna and Farida. Anna's not here because she's sick, so she didn't want to get everybody else sick, so that's why she's on the Polycom.
Thank you.
my kudos go along with that too. Nice job. Easy to, a lot of reading. Was thorough. Thank you.
So, Farida, if you don't want to stay, it's up to you. Regards to- Same thing with you, Anna. I know you're sick. If you don't want to,
No, I've been listening to you.
okay.
Okay, good. So that brings us to item number 2. Consider and provide direction to staff on how to proceed with the planning application submitted for station number 6.
Public comment.
Public comment. Do we have any public, you wanted to wait till the end?
No, it's fine now.
Okay.
You don't have a staff report or anything,
We do have a staff report.
but it's just written, okay.
I think that there should be a copy of it back here.
Oh, well, I'll speak.
Did you get a copy of the staff report? You did that?
Yeah, I did, thank you very much. Yeah. So, my name is Patty Fry. Some of you know me from other dealings, and I am on the CERT Advisory Committee, and I just want to say that I'm speaking tonight not in that capacity, so I want to make that clear. I am a resident of Menlo Park. I am served in my home and neighborhood are served by Fire Station 6, so I have a vested interest in its development and its remodeling, and I, wish every best and expeditious path towards that. It's been troubling that it's been so slow so far. But I'm speaking partially as someone who has been involved with the initiative that seems to have become kind of a political football, frankly, related to Fire Station 6. So I wanted to clarify some things about the initiative and also talk about what it is and what it isn't, and some ways forward, and express my own personal support to do everything I can for anybody who is in Menlo Park on any side of any issue to support the fire district in the remodeling and upgrading of the fire station and any other one. So what I wanted to do was tell you just a little bit about what the initiative is, and I have sorry, I'm a little imperfect.
I'll take it.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, if you give each one of them, okay. So what I'm giving you is a two-sided page that has the notice of intent related to the initiative that outlines what it is intended to do and what it changes in the specific plan. And it is geared towards regulating and establishing as firm limits the office and non-residential square footage that would be allowed in the specific plan area. It also establishes an open space definition that excludes upper level balconies and decks from counting towards the project open space. So in order to make it clear the geography that the initiative covers, we included a map. And the map is described at the bottom of that front page, and it says that when referring to this plan area, the initiative measure is referring to the bounded area within the map. Okay, so that's what we're talking about. So As far as we're concerned, the initiative attorney is concerned, this has nothing to do with the fire district, its plans, or its ability to merge parcels, get them rezoned, or change zoning. We understand that there has been another initiative in past years that had some ambiguities. We don't think ours is ambiguous, but what they did was clarify what exactly it meant in a memo of understanding or a letter of understanding with the city, so it would be very, very clear what it was intended to cover and what it didn't. And we're happy to do that with the city of Menlo Park and in the fire district too. That it is in there to establish the boundaries within which we're going to count square footage and within which the open space definition applies. So if the district decides to go forward as it is right now and decides to merge parcels and rezone them, we will still count within that boundary the non-residential square footage, because that applies towards the net additional new square footage that's within that boundary, period. So you can do whatever you want. As I understand it, there have been many years of issues raised by the fire district related to Fire Station 6, the front facade, the setback, the plan line, the width of sidewalks, all kinds of things that were raised well before the plan was adopted. They were raised between the time the plan was adopted and the city council reviewed the plan last fall, and none of them have been resolved. So you'll still have to resolve some of those no matter what you do. The initiative doesn't address any of them. Again, we're counting square feet for office, non-residential, and we're saying that balconies and upper level decks don't count towards the project open space. That's it. So we would encourage you to do what's right. We want to support our fire station and its upgrading. Putting all that aside, some of you know that I'm a former planning commissioner here in Menlo Park. And as I looked at some of the plans, I couldn't help but wonder whether or not merging the parcels was the best thing for you. Because it looked to me as if the plan as it had been presented to the city might require both a zoning ordinance change as well as a general plan amendment to increase the allowable square footage, which is known as FAR, from 30%, which is what the limit is for public facilities in the general plan and the zoning ordinance. And because public facilities can be of many stripes, not just Fire Station 6, but other kinds of public facilities, whether or not going, just heading that straight on might be causing some additional delay for you that you may not want. It appears that the FAR in the specific plan area is more than you need at the bonus level, especially that, you're really close on the base level within the specific plan district to have the square footage that you need for the station itself. And there's ample in the Hoover site as well, based on its current zoning, but also rezoned as a public facility at the 30%, so you don't have to change that. So I just wanted to suggest to you that it looks like you've got two viable paths, but I beg you and I beg the community to stop making this issue a political football, because that's what it is. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have, but that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Comments?
So does it now come back to us?
Yes, it comes back to us. Okay, I didn't have a speaking card for you, but that's okay, go
No,
ahead.
I'll fill one out when I'm done.
Okay.
I'll make it short. I'm Steve Schmidt. I was on the city council for 8 years. I live over here in the Willows. And I just saw this memo from Peter Carpenter which states I intend to make the following motions. And I direct you to number 2, which I'll make this as gentle as I can. It sounds kind of spiteful. I don't see any reason why Station 6 can't be expanded within the limitations if the initiative passes, as you wish it to be expanded. And I think by passing this motion, this number 2, you're depriving a good part of the city of Menlo Park of adequate protection from a central location of Fire Station 6. So I think it's not in the interest of the residents or the fire district to be involved in, as Patty said, a political contest over talking points in November. I think you should do what's best for the residents and do what's best for the fire district and resolve this in a way that doesn't create this confrontational relationship between the fire board and the city council and the voters in Menlo Park. Thank you.
Thank you.
Like
George
this
Fisher?
card, yes, I have George Fisher. I live on Cotton Street in Menlo Park. I hadn't really planned on speaking until I did see, when I got here in the back, that Mr. Carpenter plans to make a motion that if the fire board determines if the proposed plans of fire initiative is passed by the voters, that no future expenditures will be made to rebuild Station 6 in its current location, and the district will instead build a new fire station outside the downtown ECR specific area. I believe that Mr. Carpenter should recuse himself. Mr. Carpenter has, I would say, written hundreds of letters to the Almanac supporting the city council's decision to basically develop and add office space, basically anti-residential, and I believe that he has identified himself with the council proceedings and some anti-initiative that he has gone over the line, and therefore, as a fiduciary of this board, cannot vote. I mean, I think he should recuse himself. It doesn't make sense to me how somebody having a clearly partisan issue, I mean, he's used April Fool's jokes as a basis to attack the initiative. He's done other things that have gone, I think, well beyond, but in any event, whatever he's done, he has identified himself as anti-initiative and is now attempting to use a political position here with this fire board to further his personal interests. He was formerly a fiduciary at Stanford. He's an executive director. He's been pushing the Stanford office development. And I just don't think it's proper for him to vote on any matter involving initiative in this proceeding. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comments closed. Does anybody have any other public comments? Okay, public comment number 1 is closed. It now comes back to the board for discussion.
I certainly going to express my opinions on this. I'd like to actually thank Patty Fry for the wonderful job that she did on the back of her page of going through the chronology of interactions here. And let me just make clear, as far as I'm concerned, I don't have a position vis-a-vis the initiative in the context of this meeting tonight. What I'm trying to do is to make sure that we meet our responsibility to provide service to the community. We acquired this property in 2007. It's now 2014. The city of Menlo Park, in my opinion, has been derelict in their duty. We have time and time again approached them on this issue. We've asked them to do things. The initiative just sort of wandered into this. Now, we have a legal opinion that I think we are bound on, which says that if the initiative passes, merging these parcels would require a vote of the citizens. That legal opinion by our legal counsel has been confirmed by the city of Menlo Park. City of Menlo Park said that if you want to merge these parcels after the initiative passes, you're going to have to either take it to court or you're going to have a vote. And that vote's going to cost you $95,000. And they've made it clear that the authors of the initiative have no standing in terms of changing the terms of the initiative. The initiative terms are what they are. I don't think that we should expose ourselves to another, what'll be a 2-year delay, because you wait till, right now, the city of Menlo Park has said to us, guys, we're not going to do anything until the election. And then if the election is held, and in the event the initiative passes, then we have to then go to the city and say, we want now to put something on the ballot that would change the boundaries of the specific plan. And the city has said, yes, you'll have to do that, and oh, by the way, you're going to have to pay for the election. And so by the time that process takes place, we're now in late 2015, early 2016. And we're 10 years has gone by. And I think the time has come for us to make a decision as to how we're going to serve the downtown area. And if we cannot serve the downtown area from the existing single Hoover parcel, I think spending more money on that project is a mistake. That we should put that parcel up for sale, we should exercise our right of eminent domain, find another parcel that would not be impacted by these restrictions, and move on with a new station. As we've done we've demonstrated in East Palo Alto what we can do when we're working with a city cooperatively. And the problem here is not the initiative. The problem here is the city of Menlo Park. And they put us in a position which I think is untenable. And to continue to spend money on this project when we've passed 2 resolutions which the staff refuses to put on the agenda of the city council, to me it's just outrageous. The first one has nothing to do with the initiative. The first one simply says, would you, the city of Menlo Park, please change your definition of public facility to include the fire district as a government agency? It's the only city in the state of California that I found that does not recognize that a fire district is a government agency. So we technically can't, if you look at the zoning map of the city of Menlo Park, the existing fire stations are not public facilities because they don't recognize us as a public facility. And I'd like the chief and Tim to bring us up to date on recent discussions, because I don't see any daylight coming in terms of making progress on resolving this.
So to answer Director Carpenter's questions and concerns, and Tim has, I think, a greater breadth of knowledge, but the staff report, just to bring you up to speed on how that came about, was discussions with staff, myself, with Tim, in regards to what the options were going to be. We just don't know if there was going to be 3 or 4 or 5. We really didn't know until Tim had an opportunity to meet with the city of Menlo Park, talk with their attorney, Bill McClure. So we had some other discussions with the staff in Menlo Park regarding the timing of different things, of what they could or would or wouldn't be able to do. And then the background information here, to Director Carpenter's point, is in 2007, we did acquire the property. It's not necessarily in the background of this document. That is the time frame. And then in 2008, Director Einson, who was with me, we walked the neighborhood and handed out the flyer that you see in here to let the neighborhood know that our next step was to move forward and try and work on the facility. Other things that are material that aren't necessarily here is the economic downturn, myself getting hurt. So to Director Carpenter's point, it's not all about the initiative. It's also about interactions with the city of Menlo Park. The reason that Tim was asked to go to the September of 2011 meeting was because it was a board night. So the district board, myself, were here. And so we asked Tim to represent us on that. And Tim has been kind of our guiding legal counsel on these property issues, and not just on acquisition, but also on how we move forward with the different projects, whether it was East Palo Alto, whether it's Facebook, whether it's other initiatives that we have out there, how we would work with them. So I'll let Tim address kind of the underlying premise behind the 3 options, but also, what happened back in 2011 and even before that, kind of address Director Carpenter, cool, sorry. Go ahead, Chief.
Okay, thank you, Chief. I don't want to necessarily walk through the staff report, because I think some of the issues are addressed clearly in that, but just for the sort of the highlights from the staff report on a time frame standpoint. The one thing that did come up during the city process for the adoption of the specific plan, which the chief was referring to, was back in 2011, was the district's attempt to have the city allow a fire station as a permitted use when they developed the specific plan. And we asked them to create flexibility or exceptions to the development standards, because as everyone knows, a fire station is a unique structure. It's not something that, it's there to provide fire protection. So, there are some non-negotiable parts of how you build a fire station. So we had asked that at that time to avoid issues that the specific plan may present for the redevelopment of the fire station. And at that time, the city had decided to keep public facilities, which include a fire station, as a conditionally permitted use or requiring a use permit, and not creating this sort of general flexibility or exception to development standards. So basically, the district's request wasn't implemented at that time. Also at that time, the district already owned the Hoover lot.
That's correct.
Okay, so we owned the Hoover lot at that time. So we were hoping the specific plan to have the flexibility. It did happen. Fast forward now a couple of years, and the station design was done. It even was preliminarily done at that time back in 2011, at least conceptually. It was designed more thoroughly, and then the question was, how do you get this built, given the standards that the city has in effect in the specific plan, and then the Hoover lot, which is actually in a separate zoning district, just from how the lines fall. And basically, it's been an ongoing discussion since then of trying to set up the entire process for getting the remodeled station approved by the city. And there's been a lot of ins and outs and backs and
Can
forth.
I stop you just 1 minute on the historical point? Harold, my memory is not real clear on this, but I was on the board at the time that we acquired the property. And my understanding was that we in fact had discussions with the city and said, look, we're going to acquire this piece of property and we're going to merge it in order so we can do this. So it was not a surprise to them that we then subsequently came in and said, okay, we purchased the property, now we want to proceed with this.
Right.
Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, that's a fair
Okay.
statement.
Go ahead, Tim.
No, I was trying to bring it to a close and then open it to questions. But so after they passed the specific plan, the district's project was tasked with figuring out an entitlement path when it had one of its lots in the specific plan where the main fire station building is, and then the adjacent Hoover lot. And there have been a couple of proposals for how to get that done, including merging the lots and bringing them to public facility zoning. That was one. Keeping them separate, designing your station to meet the standards, which honestly, I think from a legal and policy standpoint, is going backwards. In other words, you should design your station as you need to design it, and then, it needs to be fit within the planning regime one way or another. So that's where we stood. I don't know if you want me to address the initiative or not, but I'll stop there and.
Well, I think
And
you
answer
need
questions.
to. A simple question.
Go ahead.
I mean, as I brought up before, the thing I'm mainly concerned about is, one, we've gone down this road, since 2007, and are we closer, or is it ever going to happen? I mean, are we going to build the fire station? Okay, the restrictions of Save Medlow with the petition or the initiative, is that going to preclude us, if it's passed, for us not to build a station? I think what we need to look at are, one, if we do move that station to another location, what those additional costs are going to be, which we don't know, because we don't know actually where we're going to have to do it. The chief's going to have to, with his staff, go through the different areas and maybe pick up something that's maybe not in that particular selected area. But the question is, can the station be built under the same Menlo petition if it passes, the way the chief and his staff has set up, the way we want the fire station with the dual lots? That's the question, I think. Tim?
Well,
I mean,
well, I don't think there is a completely straightforward answer to that question, because that's why we put options in there. I mean, the initiative presents risks to how the station project would proceed. Because after the initiative is adopted, and, you know, honestly, it is an interpretation of an already approved and circulated and signed and approved initiative. But as one of the proponents of the initiative mentioned tonight, there is a definition of a specific plan area that's in the initiative. And there's also a section of the initiative that says it's an integral part of the initiative, so definition, integral part. There's another part of the initiative that says if you're going to change definitions or parts of this initiative, it can only be done by vote of the people. So the question is, if in trying to build a station, you as a district needed, because of the city entitlement process, to get out of the specific planning district, then there is a risk that the initiative passes, that removing the district property that's on Oak Grove from the specific plan may require approval.
Or moving the Hoover parcel into the specific.
Correct. Thank you. Yes. And in other words, a change of the boundaries of what's currently in the specific plan.
Harold, what is the footprint of the current design of station, new Station 6? Does it assume a merged parcel?
It wouldn't be required. You could do it on the existing footprint, but the problem is well, it's not a problem, the benefit, we talked about designing the station that we needed. The rear lot really allows us to have the ancillary building and rear access to the structure, so we don't have to back in.
Yep.
So the back area on the Hoover house allows us to enter the station from the backside, which is safer for the crews to do that than it is to try and navigate the street. And it also wouldn't work very well if we were to put a larger piece of equipment in there, like a truck. It would be very difficult to back that piece of equipment into that building. And just for clarity, because I was thinking about your question, Director Carpenter, and that was, just so everybody understands, the fire district has never proposed we be a public facility. That actually came from the city of Menlo Park. They've always advocated that it be a PF for this facility, for Station 77, and for the Station 6. In fact, at one time wanted to do it all together. And we said, no, we don't want to do that, because we'd rather take them one at a time as we're doing the projects, which I'm glad we did. But I don't want you to think that that was staff who came up with that. The other key point on this too, going back a little bit, is if you recall, we also rented property on El Camino Real from Stanford University at the car dealership. The purpose of that rental, which was given to us, the tip, and us guided to that facility, was that we would have a secondary location to keep the engine company during the period of construction. We went so long, we ran out of the rent, and they're going to try to develop the space.
Well, not only that, but the city of Menlo Park said if we want to use it as a temporary station, we had to spend $400,000 of temporary improvements.
Right. So we finally got that way. So I mean, the history is kind of it's a frustrating, jaded kind of path, because we never did occupy the auto dealership. And at one time, we were even told, well, you need to go to the back of the auto dealership in a tent, because we're going to put electric vehicles and have like an E row for vehicle sales, because Tesla moved in down the street. So, we didn't come up with that idea. That was the city of Menlo Park that suggested to us that there was a space there. We could work with Stanford. We did that. We acquired it. We used it for training for years. And then, the time has come and passed where we never did put a fire station in their temporary quarters in there, because we still haven't been able to develop the lot.
So, Rob, in answer to your question, my concern is, it's not at all clear, given the history that Harold and Tim have described, that going down this road, we're ever going to get where we want to go. And at some point, you have to cut your losses and say, okay, this just isn't going to work. And our responsibility is to provide fire service. And I have no idea what the city council and the city manager of Menlo Park feel their responsibility is. But they have bent over backwards to block us every single step of the way. And the proof of the pudding is just look at Station 2 in East Palo Alto, which we started down that road after we started down the road to Station 6. And we will be finished with Station 2 this year. And it involved 3 parcels, an existing parcel, and we bought 2 parcels behind it. We merged the 3, and we are building probably what's going to be the best fire station in the district.
Peter, I agree with looking through the chronological setup over that Patty's given us and reviewing some of the documents that staff's provided us. I totally agree with you that there were quite a bit of mistakes made previously between the council as far back as 2007 and Menlo Park staff. That the thing that actually bothers me, the initiative, Tim, is that last paragraph. Now, I'm sure we're over the 240,000 square feet there, 240,000 square feet, where it involves the adopting controls requiring voter approval.
No, that actually won't impact us. It won't impact us. It's a technical issue, but
It will not affect
the
us.
thing that impacts us is the specific plan area definition. Because one parcel's inside the area, one parcel's outside. Every lawyer I've talked to says, if you want to merge those 2 parcels and this initiative passes, you're going to have voter approval on changing the boundary. Because you're either putting both parcels outside of the specific plan area or both parcels inside the specific plan area. And the city's put the price tag on that election of $95,000. And it will take at least a year, in my opinion, to get that on the ballot and get it resolved. Now, that assumes that the initiative passes. I have no idea whether it's going to pass or not. But we, as a fire board, can't sit here and simply say, well, there's these things going on, so we're just not going to do anything. Or, I think it's fiscally irresponsible to continue to spend money on the Station 6 side if we don't think in a reasonable period of time we're going to be able to move forward with that. Now, there's no doubt in my mind that it was not the intention of the authors of the initiative to create this problem, but they did. And it's irrevocable. There's no memorandum that anybody can sign that's going to change what's in that initiative if the voters approve it. That becomes the law.
So I have a question. Correct.
Excuse me, is what Peter has said, is that your representation also of your interpretation of the initiative?
The election law, well, the interpretation of the initiative is as he represented, which is the definition is the boundaries of the specific plan. It's an integral part. It says if you change the boundaries, you require voter approval. I think that is Director Carpenter's point. To speak to the issue of intent,
I don't want you to speculate.
I mean, I don't know if you want me to
I don't want you to speculate on
Well, I do
that.
have a question regarding this memorandum of
Thank you, Peter.
understanding, because I know that initiative that Patty was referring to was the Measure-L initiative. I've never seen this memorandum of understanding or letter of understanding, but I know that it's somewhere, because I know the co-chairs filed it, or they've done something with the city and had an agreement. And I don't know the details. Is there any way we can get that so that we can see what that's like, and could something like that work for us? And I don't know. That's why I'm asking.
Okay, well, 2 questions. One is, if it exists, it's a public record.
Right.
And you can certainly get it. Anyone would be available to get a copy of it. I'm not familiar with the initiative or the memorandum of understanding, but if it exists, yes, anyone has a right to look at it. On the broader question of whether, let's just call it documents speaking to intent. I mean, well, you can call it memorandum. I'm not going to speak to form, But just stepping back from this initiative and just talking about election law, that election law says, like any law, you look at the plain language of the law. That's where you start. The initiative is like any other law. When it's adopted, you look at the plain language. So first place you look, what does it say? If it says something that's clear and unambiguous, then that controls. That's just a general, I really don't want to apply it to any initiative specifically, but talking what the rule is. The language controls, plain language controls. And if the board feels like there is some ambiguity or no one's quite sure what was meant by this, then they can look at other things outside of that. But they have to get outside of the first look, which is what does it say.
Right, I think that the Measure L MOU was drafted after the initiative passed, if I remember correctly, because that was brought to my attention by one of the co-chairs, because there was some problem with the passage of that pension reform initiative that would have conflicted with personnel records. I can't remember the details, it was along those lines. And so I know that MOU or whatever, I don't know if it's an MOU or a letter of understanding or whatever it's called, it's something drafted by that group, the Measure L group, that happened after the initiative passed. So there could be an agreement, I think, and I don't know, of some sort that would allow us to move forward with Station 6 if this initiative passed. I don't know. I don't know, Peter. I just,
I think
I'm just
what
saying that
you're
this is what
referring to
happened at
is
Measure
that
L.
after it was passed, there was found to be a conflict with other laws. And that's not the issue.
Maybe that's the.
There's not a conflict with other laws here. This is the language they've chosen. This is the boundary. And the other section, as I've shared with you in previous discussions, is, and if you want to change the boundaries, you got to go to an election. Now, I didn't write it. I didn't interpret it. I've gotten a number of legal opinions, every single one of them the same, including the legal opinion of the city of Menlo Park.
That was my question. If the city attorney has the same interpretation you have.
I cannot directly speak to what the interpretation is, but what happened is when we went to the city with the board's resolutions that you passed and had a meeting about the timing of the process for approval of Station 6. So this was, you had a May 20th meeting, we met with the city, with staff level, we communicated, I communicated with the city attorney, chief communicated with the city manager.
Correct.
And the question was, this is a risk. Whether, you can be on whatever side you want, but there's a risk here. Can you process a project, the district's project, so that it would be approved before the initiative takes place, so that we can not worry about this risk, or at least minimize it to the extent possible? That was when the response, which I received back from the city attorney, was timing-wise, the city didn't see how they could do that before the election, that they felt they could expedite the process to have it done. And that's when he communicated to me, I believe it to be on behalf of the city, that, well, there's two options that the district can think about besides us expediting it, which I don't think we can do. One is, can you think about leaving the lots as they are, having, two lots, one project, but two lots, and see if we can meet the standards, and that's talked about in your staff report. And the other option that he mentioned was an interpretation of an issue in the initiative, which is what we were just talking about. And, the law is the law. And so, it was out there, and that's discussed briefly in the staff report also, but I don't feel comfortable as your legal counsel to tell you that sitting here today with the initiative that's yet to be approved, that's being circulated for vote, that I feel comfortable saying, oh, yeah, don't worry about that if someone says, this is the meaning. That's a concern. I'm not saying that you definitely wouldn't win. I'm just saying that there's a risk and I just have to say, there's a legal.
Let me just clarify something. You said, let's move expeditiously to do before the election. I think I've made it clear to everybody that the definition in the initiative refers to the map as drawn July 15, 2008. And so any change that's made after that, to that map, regardless on what date it's made, will be negated if the initiative passes.
That's a possible legal interpretation. And again, I think, as a representative of
No,
the
it says it in
district,
the initiative, it says that.
I will just say, as a representative of the district, I will just say that that is a possible interpretation that we can.
And that's the language that they chose, that any action that took place after this date, July 2008, regarding those boundaries, was null and void
I
if the
get,
initiative passes.
okay. And I'll just maybe make this one response to that statement, which is, there is an argument that even getting the project done before the election may still not eliminate the risk. I think that's
Yeah.
what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying. There is an argument. I'm not. Like I said, we're here as a district council, so I don't want to say whether we believe that is a strong argument. That everyone's been looking at.
So I know that the president and the chief have had some.
I can't hear you.
I know that the president and the chief have had some conversations with the mayor of Menlo Park and the city manager. I don't know if you've had that update. I'd like to hear what ensued of those conversations.
So in those conversations, I can tell you with the city manager, I don't want to put Alex in the same context going way back, because he wasn't the city manager for part of that period of time. That was Glenn Rojas at the time we started this project. But, I can tell you that Alex McIntyre is the one that told me back in February of 2013, with all the projects coming in the pipeline, with the limited staff that they had, you better get in here quick, because we only have X amount of staff, X amount of time, get your project in the system. And we did that. So, he's been actually pretty forthright about trying to help us in the process. That's where you have the one pager there that went to the planning commission, as we went to the planning commission in the first phase. Let me go back to that. The planning commission actually had some minor modifications that then, we were working on. Unfortunately, I got hurt, but, at that time, we were moving forward. So, I don't want to throw, everyone in the city, whether it's the manager or the council members, some who have been there, some who have not, in the same kind of basket. But, going backwards, it has been frustrating. Going forwards, it's been more supportive. So your question about, as the manager, what was the context of the conversation with the president and myself, was supportive. They want to see this project get done. But to Tim's point, there are issues. We're being given, I'm not going to say a promise, because I think that's too good of what it is, but it's keep your project in line, we'll figure it out, as Director Carpenter noted with the resolutions, at the end. So it required trust on behalf of the district to continue to move forward. I have no reason to question that, but I think there is a jeopardy based upon, that the lots are not merged, that, some of the issues that Director Carpenter's raised were not really issues that we were aware of before.
Question of fact. We passed 2 resolutions on this.
Yes,
Have either of those resolutions been put on the agenda for the city council?
not to my knowledge.
Fine.
No.
That to me just sort of says the whole story. These people have absolutely no interest in being supported. None whatsoever.
So I'm just curious, for option number 2.
Real quick, can we address that? Because I know
Oh,
Tim.
sure, sorry.
So on the one resolution that had to do with not the lot merger,
That's
so
the
that
one
was a
that we
discussion,
talked about.
that was a discussion with Tim and the city attorney about would that help us or hurt us in terms of timing? So I don't know if you want to address that, because my understanding was that they didn't feel it would help, they felt it would cause further delay.
If the parcels were merged. Is that
Correct.
correct? Because that's why I was going
Yes,
to talk about
that's
that
correct.
with regard to option number 2.
I mean, our intent is to move it forward expeditiously, but, again, we're kind of on this, curvy path here. We're not sure of all of what the city needs to have to do that, other than we're in the process. But, again, Tim was the one that found that out.
But
the city's saying that it might slow down if we merge the parcels, is that correct?
What their concern was, is that we have a current pending application that includes the mergers of the lots. I think whichever way we went, we discussed different options with the city, they didn't think it could be done before the election. But the one issue they
But it
mentioned.
sounds like nothing can be done before the election.
Well, I would say, it's probably fair to say that out of the options that were discussed, there wasn't identified an option that could be finally approved and effective by the city before November 3rd or 2nd,
Yeah.
whatever the
With
date is. But just as a minor, I don't even say this is minor, but it's a little complicated from a planning perspective. The one issue they brought up, to the chief's point, that was sort of maybe introduced additional delay, was an aspect of saying that you could have a greater FAR in a PF zone.
Right.
And there's this 0.3 limitation, which is low. You could have a greater FAR in a PF zone if you were in an area that was surrounded by higher FARs. And that's where they mentioned, and that was one of the options that were discussed. That's where they mentioned, well, we'd have to think about that because that's a change to our PF zone that is going to affect other locations in the city. So it wasn't a thumbs up or a thumbs down, it was more saying, okay, we have all, from their perspective, we have all kinds of timing problems. I think that adds to a potential issue rather than helping that issue. Does that help you a bit on that one?
Yeah, but it sounds like, and I'm just trying to understand the option. That option 2 is what they would say would be more beneficial to the district, is that right?
Well,
Where it says to modify the application to eliminate lot merger and leave the Oak Grove lot in the specific plan area?
That was the option the city identified for the district to consider in lieu of any option that would, quote, beat the election. In other words, they're like, we don't see how we, quote, beat the election. There's mention, which Director Carpenter said, well, even if you beat it, there's some ambiguity even then. So here's an option where if you could keep your lot in the specific plan and still do your project, then whichever way the election goes, in the city's opinion, you'd be okay. That wasn't committing to a time frame or anything, it was just saying, if you're concerned about the initiative, why don't you think about projects? And that is option 2 that we brought to you because the city did feel that that would be a potential way of addressing the concern and uncertainty presented
So it
by
would
the
mitigate,
issue.
they're thinking it would mitigate the risk of if the initiative passes, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, in their opinion, right, I mean,
That's their opinion,
in their opinion, I mean, to be fair, I think they did present the option as one that they thought would avoid the risk of the initiative.
I think that they're absolutely right. The problem is that we as a fire board are faced with, do we want to build a suboptimal station? And I don't think we want to build a suboptimal station.
The height issue is still the issue if you do that. So if you read in option 2, it may work out, but it's going to require a variance for the height. And the building next door, I think, as you pointed out, is high and big and move much quicker. But, we still have to go back to the city. It's not as if they just grant us all these things. We still have to go back, and we would need to do some redesign if that's not authorized. So, that's why I hesitate a little bit, because it's not that it's not an option. It's that every one of these options has risk, has problems, has cost.
Station 4 is located where? In what
The
jurisdiction?
county area.
In the county.
Unincorporated San Mateo County, Peter.
There. So we could, in fact, put 2 units in Station 4 and serve the downtown area.
You could, but the response times would be changed.
Absolutely, but that would be a decision the city of Menlo Park makes, not us. You know, if we can't build the station that we think we ought to build it's on the site that we own, then we have to do the next best thing. And the advantage of expanding Station 4 is we'll have a situation much like East Palo Alto where we're dealing with a cooperative government agency rather than an adversary.
The proposal at the time, so Station 4 was fourth on the last iteration of priorities.
Yeah.
It went Station 2, Station 6, Station 1, Station 4, and that was the last of the stations that were built in the 40s and 50s.
But that was not considering it as a replacement of Station 6.
Correct. When we had the discussion way back when about Station 6, if you recall, one of the reasons that we went to the car lot, or looked at the car lot, was because the city was already kind of having some gyrations about leaving the engine company on the existing parcel, the Hoover parcel, where we had proposed to put it at the back of the lot so the station could be constructed just like we have at Station 2. And we would use a trailer and a tent and the whole thing that we have down there right now so that we could operate out of the same place. We moved towards the car lot because at least we were still in District 6. Station 4 was always an option for the district to put the company up there and to double up, but it's not the preferred method because it's no longer in that downtown district.
What about putting it on the Stanford property?
Well, you could, but it's basically why they ended the lease is they were proposing.
No, if we went to Stanford and said, look, we would like to be part of your new proposal, because Stanford clearly are going to have to come in with a new proposal. And I think that given the way that the city's operating, it's very likely that what Stanford's going to do is come in with multiple proposals for each parcel. And so one of those proposals could include a fire station in addition to whatever else they have. It wouldn't have to be a freestanding building. You'd have a fire station as part of a larger structure. From a location standpoint, if we were on El Camino in the 500 ECR area between the hotel and the Big Six, that would also be give us adequate response time in the downtown area.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, that was why we were proposing to do the car lot. Ideally, we tried to get closer, just so everybody's clear though, to Middle, because by the shopping center, because then we had a straight shot up. El Camino still is a challenge because it's
If we want to be closer to Middle, then maybe what we ought to be doing is talking to Stanford about partnering with them with the parcel that faces Middle.
We actually had the discussion when we rented the parcel that was further down. At that time, they were not interested in
Well, that was
availing
before.
that lot. Oh yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah. My reading is that, you know, that kind of conversation might be very beneficial.
We have a very good relationship with them. I mean, again, they
Sure,
gave us
better
the
than
lot.
the city.
They gave us the lot. We had to pay the property taxes, but it was at no cost to the district or the taxpayers, quite honestly.
So my concern, colleagues, is that I think we should be very, very careful about continuing to spend money and in particular staff effort on the current Station 6 location, because I think for a variety of reasons, most of them having to do with the city of Menlo Park, some of them having to do with the wording of this initiative, that money all may be put to naught. And I think now's the time to ask ourselves, do we want to back off and look at alternatives? Or do we want to continue to spend money on this with an uncertain outcome?
So I think, you bring up some great issues. I also think that this discussion should, quite frankly, be among the full board. I mean, it's a pretty important discussion. And
We have a quorum.
I still think it should be put before the full board, because I know that Chuck has very definite opinion on this, and I think it's only fair that he expresses his opinion as well as we all have that opportunity.
Well, you can certainly make a motion to table this until we have a full board.
I will make that motion to table this until we can have a full board discussion.
I'm not going to second it. I think it would be a
So
mistake.
you're making a motion
I'm
to
making a
table?
motion.
Do I have a second? I'll second it. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Opposed? So we're back to the staff report and the options. I would now like to make a motion. I've circulated this ahead of time, and I try to do that when I'm going to make a motion because I think it's only fair to my colleagues. It also gives people the opportunity to take cheap shots at me, but that's what they don't want. The first motion, I will in fact change it to read, the fire board hereby determines that since the city of Menlo Park is unwilling to proceed expeditiously with the two fire board resolutions regarding Station 6, that no further expenditures will be made to rebuild Station 6 at its current location, and the district will instead build a new fire station outside of the downtown ECR specific plan area. I will strike that last portion, and the district will instead consider alternate sites, period.
I'll say what that. So what part do you want to strike?
Okay.
Building new fire station outside of it.
So
you're
I don't
saying
want to preclude, for example, partnering with Stanford, et cetera. I just want to get away from this merged parcel, because that's the thing that's driving us crazy here, plus the ineptitude of the city. So the revised resolution reads, the fire board hereby determines that since the city of Menlo Park is unwilling to proceed expeditiously, and then I would forget the resolutions regarding Station 6, that no further expenditures will be made to rebuild Station 6 at its current location, and the district will instead consider alternate placements, alternate locations.
You're striking resolutions?
Yeah, that's irrelevant.
Right.
That's not the issue. The issue is the fact that they just simply don't want to proceed after 7 years of work with getting this thing done. And I point you to the fact that they just decided, oh, well, we're going to have a police station in East Menlo Park. And they created a police station in East Menlo Park, and it never went to the planning commission. The plans were, you know, they just penciled it, said, fine, go ahead and go ahead with it. Just a different standard that they're using with the fire district.
Hang on. That's what I want to ask you. You got it?
The final wording of what?
The fire board hereby determines that since the city of Menlo Park is unwilling to proceed expeditiously regarding Station 6, that no further expenditures will be made to rebuild Station 6 at its current location, and the district will instead
Consider alternate locations.
consider alternate sites.
Okay. There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's open for discussion.
And let me make clear that if this passes, I'm not going to make the second motion because it will be moved.
Well, that's what my question was.
And my answer is that the second resolution,
You need a second motion.
second motion would be moved, so I won't make it. This would be the only motion that I would intend to make regarding Station 6, except when we finish with this, to go back to the budget issue and take the budget for Station 6 expenditures
Right, now.
and put that back on the table for further discussion, so that the staff has a clear idea of, you know, where they stand with the budgetary authorization.
Right, so Rob, are you okay with removing the budgetary expenses, or the budgetary line items for Station 6? Because that's exactly what this is.
We've done that already.
Right, because
No, but we would be voting, exactly, we would be voting to exclude that permanently, and Rob did not want that because
No, Station 6 at its current location. That's what this says. And I just explained that once we deal with this
I
motion,
understand that. I just wanted to make sure that it was very clear that we would not be budgeting for Station 6 right now.
No, that's not-
We don't have an
No,
alternate
it's not that-
location.
it's still,
No.
it's just table relative.
what this language says is that we will not spend any more money for Station 6 at the current location.
Right.
At the current location. When we finish, if this motion were to pass, and I want to presume that it would, or even if it doesn't pass, then we come back to the tabled motion on the portion of the budget regarding Station 6 expenditures. And what is our direction to staff? And I am perfectly comfortable saying to staff, hey, you've got a line item in the budget for replacing Station 6. And you should proceed to come back to the board with your recommendations as to how we should replace Station 6. However, we don't think that continuing to pour money down this hole on Hoover Avenue, on Hoover, and Oak Grove makes sense. Because there's no end, there's no light at the end of the
I
tunnel.
get that, and I agree. The city's been totally difficult to work with for many years,
So,
7.
so this doesn't say we stop proceeding with Station 6. It says we stop proceeding with Station 6 at its current location. That's what we're saying.
See, I'm not necessarily in favor of that either.
Well,
I think that we've started the process with them. We don't know exactly where that's gonna go. I would like to see that stay where it is and let it proceed.
how much more are you going to spend?
I don't wanna spend any more. Stop the budget, stop spending any more money
I see.
on architects or anything else, but let it sit with the city to find out where it goes. Their take is nothing's gonna happen until after the initiative either is yes or no. But
Okay.
what happens if it turns out the initiative is no? And that's a possibility.
Well, and we, as I said, my major problem is not with the initiative. I think that is an obstacle which potentially, as Tim says, may get in our way.
Right?
My problem is that I think dealing with a Byzantine city government on this, on these two parcels, one of which is in the residential zone, the other which is another zone, and they have all of these rules and regulations. I mean, if we just had said, hey, we're going to build a building like the building next door, we'd be done by now.
Well, I still think I would like to leave it. They have a new city manager, a different city manager than when we started the process. When the chief and I talked to him, he's in favor of the fire station being where it is. He's in favor of us putting them together. I think we need to give him a chance to do that. If we find out he's wrong, we can always go back and do what you
Okay,
propose.
well, we got a motion. Is it clear what the intent is here?
Well,
Can you repeat the motion again, Ms. Michelle? Sorry.
The fire board hereby determines that since the city of Menlo Park is unwilling to proceed expeditiously regarding Station 6, that no further expenditures will be made to rebuild Station 6 at its current location, and the district will instead consider alternate sites.
Any more discussion?
well, I just want to just add something. The reason why I second Peter's motion was one, the three options, Chief, that you gave us in your staff report. I would really like to go with options 1 or even options 2, because I've seen through the dealing with the planning commission and with the council. They're very, very reasonable in passing variances relative to specifics of business and residential. I haven't seen anything in the fire station. I would, the read that I've got through the council members that I've spoken with, that they want the station built and they want it built on that location. But Tim brings up a lot of factors here. One being the wording of the actual initiative, which says it has to go to the voters, and then 2 is that the city of Menlo Park, as Peter has said, has put us back again because they're waiting for what's going to
You're
happen.
paralyzed. You're paralyzed.
So I mean, I think we need to send some type of a message as to say that this has been going on since 2007, 2008, and I think Peter's motion is reasonable.
So,
I would make one modification to it as I read through it. And it says, right now it says, and the district will instead consider alternate location. I'd strike the word instead and just simply say, we'll consider alternate locations. So that doesn't take the current site totally off the table, but just says, look, we'll look at what else we can do. We may end up coming back to this site as still the best thing, but right now, we're not going to spend any more money on it.
that's my take.
Well,
Stop the spending right now, but don't take it out of the queue.
Okay.
and then-
No, I agree
If we strike instead, then the motion, I think, allows that to take place, that we will consider alternate locations And then at some point, the staff can come back to us after they've done one of these really good response time reports and stuff like that, after they've talked to Stanford and other people, and say, okay, we've identified 3 alternate locations. We can build a suboptimal station on Oak Grove. We can build an optimal station here or here or here. And here's the timeline, and here is the projected cost of those alternatives. And then we would then make a decision as to how we want to proceed to provide fire services to the downtown area.
So I'm just curious, Rob, you had brought up, I'm kind of in agreement with you. It's that this motion, if we make this and approve this, would probably preclude us from even looking at the options, right? So I'm just curious as to why you're now,
I just brought up the options from the staff report and to show the reasoning why Peter's motion makes
Yeah, we look
sense,
at,
because
Rob and I, we've looked at, looking at those 3, we've chosen number 3. But we've done it in a way which still keeps 6 in the mix.
No, but if you do it the way Peter's talking about, what you do is you do eliminate one of the 3 options. What you basically say is that we're leaving it in the queue in Menlo Park. We're not spending any more money on architects or development. We're just going to wait and see how the process goes over there. If we don't like the process, or it's too slow, you just simply said is that we're not spending any more money now, but we're gonna start looking at alternatives for other station locations.
I get that, so I misunderstood you then, Rob. I thought you thought that you were going for options 1 or 2, option 1 or option 2.
no, I was just
Okay, never
explaining
mind.
some of the
I get it. I misunderstood.
partnerships. Okay.
But I agree, Peter, that.
So what is the motion that's before us?
Okay, we comfortable? We want-
Yeah, I can read it one last time?
Yes,
Well,
you
she
got
got that.
it right.
I keep dropping out words, but
Okay,
that's
no
better.
worries.
Simpler is better.
Okay. The fire board hereby determines that since the city of Menlo Park is unwilling to proceed expeditiously regarding Station 6, that no further expenditures will be made to rebuild Station 6 at its current location, and the district will consider alternate locations.
Would you consider dropping out since Menlo Park?
Hey, Rex. So we have one concern about, just so you have full disclosure, in the last, I believe the last meeting last month, you voted on the environmental review, which had to be approved by the council.
Right.
So the only thing we're discussing now, since that's a contract, we're not sure, Tim can jump in, if we can just flip the switch on that and turn it off.
Can't we?
Right, the question is, when you say you're not going to expend any, make no further expenditures to rebuild it at its current location, then the question is, can the city do any kind of processing without additional funds from the district at this point? You know, when the city, just so you understand, and it's a decision of the board, but when the city processes an application, they require either sometimes a deposit to be made by the applicant, which I think you've made in
That's
part.
18,000.
You've made in part. And then they also have this contract with the environmental review consultant, but I'm not sure if the money,
GHD.
yes, has the money been,
I signed it, I don't know.
Yeah, we probably obligated that, but that's what the economists call sunk cost. And we've incurred that cost.
but just understanding that,
Sorry, Peter, it's Chief's good for
Hold on.
yeah, so just the question to make sure, and this is more so that one understands how to plan out. If you're saying no further expenditures will be made, you're controlling what you control. You're saying you're not contributing more money from the district.
We will fulfill what commitments we've made.
Okay, but to the extent that there are funds already with the city,
Yeah.
and,
We can't take them away.
okay, and the contract that says you'll cover the environmental review expenses, I agree. I mean, if you want to use that term, let's say already allocated, I think that would be
Yeah,
fair to
that's
say.
fine, fair.
So we're looking forward, but, so I just wanted, because while we're talking, just understand that that's how we view what was
What
just
the
said.
language means.
It's for no further expenditures means that whatever's already,
I'm willing to give you a chance
How
of
about
what they
the word
have already,
strike?
that's fine, but I'm
Tim?
not,
Strike further and put new.
I don't necessarily have a problem with further. I mean,
Well, no,
you may
just
be
go-
clearer. I just want to make sure
I
everyone
appreciate
understood
that, I'm just
what that
trying
meant.
to,
I
would it be
mean,
clear if we said no
well,
new
no
expenditures?
new additional, I mean.
No additional expenditures.
No new additional.
Or no additional?
No additional expenditures.
Okay. All right.
So strike for.
We'll call it expenditures, allocations, and
Sort of the architect, you know, we are too, right?
See, we're gonna eat the architect.
Hi, this is Anna.
Well,
yeah, we can.
I would recommend against that language.
What?
Which language?
No further or no new expenditures, because we are going to have expenditure on Fire Station 6 no matter what alternative we go with.
How so? What is,
Any kind of study, it's not a, it is a very general,
Anna, the language says will be made to rebuild Station 6 at its current location. It doesn't mean we can't, and we're going to come back to the budget after we finish this issue and approve a budget for the replacement of Station 6. All we're doing is saying that that replacement of Station 6 is not going to be exclusively devoted to the Oak Grove location. We are going to, we're going to protect our options. We're going to look at other sites.
okay, no, I'm fine with that then. I just, from a budgetary aspect, I just don't want to limit our options, but that's fine,
Yeah, we're expanding our options, not limiting them.
yes.
Okay. Have we got to, excuse me. Excuse me, have a meeting? Yes, we want to say something?
So, just for clarification, we struck further and replaced it with additional.
That's correct.
Okay.
I'm prepared to do that if anybody is troubled by the word further, I would substitute additional. If people don't think that, that's what Tim has done is just made us aware that we have already entered into some obligations that we have to fulfill. And the intent of this motion is not to retroactively walk away from our obligations. It just says moving forward, we're not going to make more obligations which are site-specific.
how about just saying it like that? Moving forward, we're not gonna commit any more money.
I've tried to do that, but
the only two obligations that we've been discussing is, one is the environmental review, which had to go through the council. The other one is the architect. So both are, we don't know specific language in the architect's agreement. That's the only two contracts that we have currently.
in the architect, we could basically say to them, hey guys, don't worry too much about the footprint right now. Try to design what you think is a station which will meet the needs of the downtown area. And we will then try to find the best possible site for that station.
So you're gonna design the station, and we'll see if we can find a
It's
footprint that'll fit.
basically the design is there. It's a tune-up on the design from what the firefighters, when they looked at it again, said, hey, we want to see some different things. We looked at the exterior aesthetics, what the planning commission had said. There's some things there that we were working on as well. So it's not a lot of work, but that was the extent of the work that was done, including working with the contractor that the city brought in for environmental.
So here's my concern, that it's not, this station does not only serve the downtown, it also serves the residents who live around there. And we've heard from a couple of them today. And, my concern is, if things don't pan out, then they're not gonna have any service either.
Well, maybe those people might go spend some time before the city council.
I'm sure they already have.
I doubt it. I don't think I've never heard a single resident speak up before the city council saying, we want you to move forward on Station 6. It hasn't happened. You'll look through the minutes in vain for a single resident who stood up and said, hey, City of Menlo Park, why aren't you moving forward on Station 6?
So what's the exact wording that we have? Let's get this
Well,
right.
So,
Let me just clarify this last point. Do you want further change to additional, or do you want it to remain as further? I'm comfortable with either one, whichever you think provides the best clarity.
Andy, you want to weigh in?
Yes, I think additional.
Okay, additional it is. Michelle, the final language?
I mean, we think that'll work only because we've already entered in a contract with the architect. So we've got a not to exceed, and we've entered in a contract with the environmental review folks. And that's a set number as well, maybe less, but.
Okay.
So, you know, my concern is we just don't have people, we don't just cut them off.
Not the intention.
Right.
Not the intention.
Understood.
Costco builds stuff all the time, and they don't start every single building with a fresh sheet of paper.
Very
You
true.
know, they have a plan, and I think that the plan that these people designed to serve the downtown area is going to be one that could be cited at a number of different locations. And you've already indicated that El Camino and Middle is got a lot of advantages to it.
Would be a nice location.
So,
that assumes,
okay, Michelle, let's read it one.
Okay.
that assumes that we get it there. Maybe not. And then what?
Well, you don't know. You just have to go.
I didn't hear what you're saying, because
That
you're talking to the other side of the room.
assumes that we get it there, but if we don't get it there, then what?
Look for another
Get it
location.
where?
Get it, let's say the El Camino property doesn't work out.
Well, we're asking the staff, in conjunction with this motion, to consider alternative sites.
I understand that. I don't want to, I know that we're still on this motion, but I am wondering if option 2 may be the best because it's a compromise with the city and it mitigates the risk for people impacting the initiative.
I would vote against 2 because it is a suboptimal solution and making the easy bad decision rather than making the hard right decision.